Hello, and welcome everybody to episode 2 Before the Ballman Speaks at post UFC 188. Cain Velaquez against Fabricio Werdum, and the upset of the year so far, we'll say. Fabricio Werdum locking in a submission in the third round. An absolutely wild result to a somewhat tepid night of fights. But I think that the main event, and maybe to a certain degree the co-main event, also lived up to the hype. Unquestionably, this is the best heavyweight fight we've seen in the title picture for the last few months. Our guest this week, we only have two. We'll be joined first of all by the man himself, James Lynch. You might know James from his podcast, The Parting Shot. He also is the creator and co-host of that podcast. We're also being joined by Joey Gardner. He's co-host of Cage Cash. So let's get this started. I'm going to message in James. Let's review the fights to start with first, give everyone kind of a chance to catch up with the broadcast. I think that the main event spoke for itself. It was a wild fight. There was definite moments there by Cain Velaquez, but it seemed like it was all Werdum all the way. Werdum landed heavy punches, slowed him down in every step of in every phase of the game. Cain just seemed like he was out of sorts a bit. Seemed like he wasn't quite in the same shape that he normally is. He wasn't as crisp in his transition between grappling and striking, and it seemed like by the third round he was done. He sat down into his corner, and the guys at AKA really just told him, you have to get this takedown or you're going to lose the fight, and that was the reality of the situation. He had nothing for Werdum standing, which is crazy because I think that a guy like Cain Velaquez has more options with transitioning from, striking into his takedowns, and that allows, those opportunities in the stand-up game to then open up because of the threat of the takedown. Everyone knows this. And the fight ended how it ended. I thought that Werdum actually looked tired too and looked a little plodding, not as bouncy on his feet as he normally is, and that definitely that hurt. I'm getting some messages that my link isn't working. I'm going to message this out to everyone again to go onto YouTube. Bear with me for a second for those who did manage to find the link. If you can, just one moment. I'm bringing up YouTube. If not, we will just have to live with what we have here. And I'm sending out a link to my page for the YouTube channel on this. You can watch all of my videos that are embedded here afterwards, or you can come back and watch them live while they're being broadcasted. Sorry for the delay, fellas. Boom. All right, so let's get this started. I'm going to message out to my good friend James Lynch, and we'll get his input onto the main event and how everything is going. All right. James Lynch will be on in a second. The co-main event in this fight, geez, oh my God, Eddie Alvarez against Gilbert Melendez. Was Gilbert Melendez robbed? Probably not. It seemed like he kind of gave away the fight at some point. Just wasn't all that into following up. It seemed like after that first round that he was just going to lay that jab in on him all day. And there was going to be no response from Eddie. Eddie managed to fight through that badly broken nose. He had serious swelling and aggravation going on there, but didn't seem to matter. He found his shots, landed some big ones. All right. And James should be calling in any moment there. But Gilbert kind of gave it away, in my opinion. The second and third rounds, at any point he could have kind of pressed it a little bit and made his mark on the fight. He got taken down real easily, which was disappointing for me. And mostly because I had my big bet on the night. As far as bets go on the night, I had a terrible night, and my big play on Gilbert Melendez for 4 units lost, and that's how my game ended. Other notes on the fight. Well, we had Kyle Pendred battle Dodger Montaro, maybe one of the worst fights we've seen. The opening fight on Fight Pass last week won the award for Stinker. I think that Kyle Pendred stole that award for the month. Hey, how are we doing there, James?
Good, man. How are you?
Doing good. That main event, let's just start right off the top with that.
Let's do it.
Cain Velaquez comes out there. Is it more of him not showing up and looking tired and slow, or was it just a beautiful performance by Werdum?
I think it's a combination of both. I think Werdum looked very impressive. His stand-up is always evolving. I think that was on display tonight. And then on top of that, I think Cain did struggle a bit. He was slowing down a bit. We're used to seeing a higher pace from him. They talked about it ad nauseum on the broadcast about the high altitude, but I really do feel like that did play a factor in this fight. But you can't take anything away from Werdum. Incredible performance, and just incredible to think that ever since his return, he's been undefeated in the UFC.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's really a credit towards his improved striking. It's just really stepped up a few notches. I think we should have seen this when it started with the Brown fight. He outstruck Mark Hunt with some crafty traps that he laid. Yeah. I think that just the level of Cain's game and the pressure that he puts out, everyone kind of dismissed Werdum. Let's rewind a little bit, though. Is Cain Velasquez loss the worst thing possible for the Mexican market?
I mean, it's hard to say. I know they had a great turnout there. I know a lot of people were saying how much buzz there was this time around with Cain being there. I don't know too much about the market there, but I think a loss might not be the worst thing in the world for Cain. He lost to Junior Dos Santos, on the Fox card way back when. People seem to forget about that. I think he's a guy that is, in this sport for the long haul, and I think that loss might be the best thing for him as far as, some things he might need to adjust and become a better fighter.
So easy performance of the night goes to Fabricio Werdum. Who else do you look at who had a great finish that stood out to you?
Oh, as far as finishes go, I thought Efren Escudero looked great tonight. Getting the submission win over Drew Dober. There was a lot of good performances tonight. As far as finishes go, like I mentioned there, Escudero, I thought what he did was quite well. I know technically Calvin Gastelum got the finish. It was good to see him get back on the winning track. There were a lot of good performances. I think Yair Rodriguez looked great tonight. That was a bit of a surprise to a lot of people. A lot of people picked Charles Rosa in that one. But I think as far as like I mentioned off the top there, I think Escudero for me was the best finish of the night, or Werdum, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, my 1-2 would probably be Werdum and Escudero. Kind of hard not to give it to Patrick Williams there, because a very similar finish, and it just seemed that the caliber of opponent for Efren might have been better. Although I do believe Perez might have been a higher favorite in that fight. Yeah. Overall, think about the card as a whole. What do we grade it? A to Z.
It's tough to say. I thought there were some good performances. Obviously, you look at the fight between Melendez and Alvarez. I think that didn't really live up to what people wanted. So there were some fights that maybe didn't deliver that we would have expected. But at the same time, I think the main event I thought delivered very well. I think you have a new champion. I think that's always an intriguing storyline. And then you have changing the guard, so to speak. I would give it a B. I would. I wouldn't. I'm not going to go as far as give it anything higher than that, just because I do think there were a couple dull ones in there, but that's just kind of the realist in me as opposed to the fan.
Yeah, you mentioned at the beginning of that the Gilbert fight kind of disappointed. I'm not sure what else we really kind of would expect from that fight, except for something similar. The stylistic matchup seemed like it was going to bring, some level of action, but they really nullify each other's games. I was shocked to see as much kicking as we did see from Alvarez. That's something, a very traditional boxer, at least in my mind. Maybe that's a bias. But I think the grinding and the wrestling from Alvarez late kind of put a tarnish on that fight. Yeah. Overall, from you, a bust?
It's hard to say. There wasn't a lot of buzz going into this card to begin with, so I think it kind of lived up to what I think people expected. I know towards like kind of the last couple of days, people are getting pretty excited on social media, but I think it kind of just was expected. I don't think there was going to be, like I said, the only fight I thought that really didn't deliver the goods was the Alvarez-Melendez fight. And that, coming from me, I actually enjoyed the fight, but people were expecting Diego Sanchez and Gilbert Melendez all over again. That didn't happen. So that's where I think that people's expectations kind of got let down a bit on the card overall.
I think that Eddie's fights with Michael Chandler really developed this persona for Eddie Alvarez of just like an action, reckless fighter, when really he's a methodical kind of dude. And while he loves getting into firefights, he also loves getting the best in those firefights and then does it on a very intelligent basis. Fight of the night for you.
I mean, it's tough to say. I think I definitely enjoyed the Rosa Rodriguez fight. I think there's a lot of good candidates that you could go with. I'll probably go with Rodriguez Rosa, actually. I just thought that the fact that Rodriguez was a guy that a lot of people, including myself, were counting out. I thought, the stuff that he was putting on there, I thought it was incredible. I think the Werdum and Velasquez fight, as far as action goes, could definitely get some consideration as well too. But yeah, it's tough to say. I don't know. I'll probably go Rodriguez and Rosa. What's yours?
I'm going to go with the main event just to counteract you, because my pick was I was leaning towards Rosa and Rodriguez. Touching on that fight for a bit, Patrick Weidman had sold, and Patrick Weidman writes for SureDog, does the brilliant fight analysis there. I encourage anyone who enjoys the sport to check out what he
does a great job.
It's a really in-depth and technical and intelligent review. He had sold me on the idea of Rosa just being steps ahead in his evolution, and the tape seemed to have sold that narrative. But Rodriguez took a big step up and rose to that challenge really nicely, and that was a great performance by him. That was a split decision, I believe, but
yeah, it should have been 30-27 in my opinion. I didn't give any of the rounds to Rosa, and I picked Rosa in this fight, and I agreed with Wyman's breakdown. Actually, I felt that Rosa had the experience. I felt that he's had a really good camp in ATT. Look, sometimes when we were previewing fights, sometimes you don't see how much a guy has evolved in the gym, and that is something we saw on display here tonight with Rodriguez, looking much different than we've seen him in other fights. I thought he really stepped up to the occasion, like you just mentioned there, and rightfully so, he gets the win here.
Yeah, talented athlete, very young, a lot of growth that can happen in between these camps, and a good little bit of time that he took off. So, maybe a force to be reckoned with, maybe not. Time will tell on that one. I wanted to touch with the another fight on the prelims with Henry Cejudo. A very interesting fight with him and Chico Camus. A lot of people kind of think his bubble got burst, in that fight. What did you think?
I mean, it wasn't the type of performance that people are going to really demand a title shot now, as far as Henry Cejudo. I think that's the expectations, let's be honest here, they were a bit too high going into this one. His, the line on this fight going into it, I believe he closed at something like minus 1275. I mean, that is ridiculous. He's the highest favorite on this card. Yeah, on paper, you look at this fight, he should win, but not by that much of a margin. I think Cejudo did what he needed to do to win, but there's obviously still plenty of room for growth for him, not only in his skill set, but I think in a lot of other areas too, where I think even mentally, I think in this fight, I don't think he had the right approach. So he got the job done, he got the win, but he doesn't scream to me a contender at this moment. I'd like to see him get a fight or two before we start having that discussion.
Yeah, probably one of the most absurd lines. I saw it as high as minus 1333.
Wow, it's like a boxing line.
Yeah, right. Beyond ridiculous for MMA, and insulting to Chico Camus, a guy who didn't go out there, didn't get the victory, but proved his worth, especially in that first round. Not a slouch by any means there, Chico Camus. Some weird stuff happened on this card. If anyone should have been a minus 1300 favorite on this card, it should have been Johnny Chase early in the prelims with this fight against, and let me make sure I get his name right, Francisco Trevino.
Yeah.
Francisco Trevino easily winning my Clown of the Week award with just his overall behavior. It started early in the cage. He seemed to circle the cage while fighter announcements were still going on. Did you catch that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, that was really odd. I don't know what was going on there. Sometimes these things happen in MMA, as Gus Johnson likes to say.
A legendary line and a pretty apropos one.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the talking during the fight and his whole kind of attitude towards everything. It looked like he was trying to portray this strength while Johnny Chase is getting out there looking like a world beater.
Yeah, I know. It was, yeah, I think, you look at the fight, I mean, Case just, he dominated. And by the way, I should mention Francisco Trevino in no relation to Lee Trevino, the PGA player, if anyone was confused there. So I
I
had
bet
to
a
throw
lot of
that
people were confused.
in. I could see it, it's his Mexican cousin or something. So,
So boring fight of the night. What do you got?
uh,
There's two contenders for me.
Yeah, I mean, I thought I definitely thought that the Pendred fight is up there for sure. Pendred deserved the win, but there was parts in that fight that started to remind me a bit. I hate to use the example of Nate Quarry and Caleb Starnes. A bit of running, not a lot of engagement. If you're in Mexico, especially a culture like that is used to seeing all-out wars and brawls, and you're seeing two guys who aren't really engaging that much. I shouldn't say two guys. I think Montana was the guy who really wasn't engaging that much. I felt that was a bit of a letdown as far as one of the fights on the card.
Yeah, a huge letdown. Another just pure stinker though, and it was almost. I don't even know if I want to use the word disappointing or just like irritating. It was just a mess. Angela Hill against Tisha
Oh
Torres.
yeah, yeah.
I don't so much blame Torres in it because she had the wrestling advantage and dominated, but I don't see how we didn't see that coming and why we're putting it first up on the pay-per-view.
Yeah, I think part of it is they're trying to bolster that division, the strawweight division. That's why she's on there. Torres. I hate to bring it up, but fairly attractive woman. You got to throw her on there to try and market her a bit. But you're right. You just look at her fights, and you even look at the fights on the Ultimate Fighter too. I mean, she lost both the fights on the Ultimate Fighter, and then even her wins, even outside the UFC or even in the UFC, they're always decisions. She's not a finisher. I think we've realized this with Tisha Torres. She is someone who's, like you mentioned, a great wrestler and has a great game plan in most of her fights, and that's how she wins her fights. But people thinking she was going to go in there and steamroll Angela Hill, I just didn't see it happening. I did. Most women's fights end up going to decision. I think if you look at like the scale of it, especially in the strawweight division. So I was not surprised that Torres wasn't able to get the finish and got the decision instead.
Yeah, I think that, a very predictable outcome there, but also I almost feel bad for Angela Hill in the spot. I think that she's really talented. I think that she's a super aggressive fighter, but she's clearly not on this level of these other girls. She has like 3 or 4 pro fights. I might be getting that wrong, but it's still very low when you compare it to people who've been fighting, elite in that 125, and maybe Tisha doesn't even have all that many fights in 115. I'm sorry, and maybe Tisha doesn't have that many fights more, but the level of competition is just a huge step up. Angela Hill needs to not be cut by the UFC and needs to fight some people in her own skill level.
Yeah, I completely agree. And actually, Angela Hill's record's 2-1. I think I don't know if that's including tonight's fight. I will just quickly check that out. But in general, I just think that it's a new division, so we don't really know what's going on as far as her development. And one of the things I wish it kind of happens a bit, but it doesn't happen often enough. I wish they would use Invicta more as like a minor league organization. Keep Angela Hill under the Zuffa banner and maybe throw her in an Invicta. Give her more of a spotlight. As far as some exposure, and give her an opponent that's kind of more on her level. Torres is a lot more experienced. You just look at the type of opponents she's fought. I'm with you. I think Hill has a lot of potential, but staying in the UFC, I think there's a lot of really good fighters, and I'm not sure she'll get the same development there. But again, you might have something here with Hill. It's just not right now. So you have to find a way to really groom her. And the reason I like Invicta is because it's the focus is all on the women, right? So if Hill was going to fight someone in the UFC in her second fight, and it was a lower tier opponent, she'll probably get lost in the shuffle in the prelims. But if you put her on Invicta, people get to see her more in a showcase because it is all about the women. So that's kind of my view on up and coming fighters in the in the strawweight division.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if that just speaks to the overall matchmaking style of the UFC. Sometimes the wrong people get pushed way too quickly, and then sometimes fighters get the boxing treatment and get the slow climb up, and it's always kind of awkward to see who falls into what categories. You want to talk about Clay Collard? He was the first fight of the night.
Yeah.
Kind of got exposed here,
Yeah.
in a big way. I don't want to take anything away from Benitez, who looked really good actually. But Clay's style just might not be right for MMA. He needs to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, no, and I got to give kudos to Adam Martin, my buddy over there at MMA Oddsbreaker. He had a tweet tonight about if Collard keeps fighting like this, he's gonna have a short career. He's 22 years old. I think we saw that tonight. I think exposed is the right word to describe him at this point. Striking defense not good at all. I think there's some potential there, but he's really got to fix some holes, especially with his defensive game. You do that, you're gonna have a short career. I think we're seeing some guys like that in the UFC right now. A guy that comes to mind is someone like Sam Stout, whose chin appears to be gone because he's just taken so much punishment and he never really got to that next level. And I know Collard's still very young, but you got to pick out these things early on in your fighting career so you're not going to take that much punishment and be just kind of a dummy later on in your career.
Yeah, especially at that young age. I think the best bet for him, take a year off. Tighten up that boxing skills, learn to put them up right next to your chin there, and because he's an athletic guy, seems like a talented guy, might be able to have a decent career, but you can't take punishment like that in wars, like you said. Overall, how'd you do, buddy? You placed some bets. Everyone who follows you knows you like to stick your money where your mouth is. Where'd it go? Where'd it land?
Well, as far as my bets went tonight, I did okay. I actually I ended up losing a couple units. My big play tonight was actually Rosa and the parlay with the over in the Alvarez-Melendez fight. So that cashed, but Rosa obviously lost. I was pretty confident Rosa was going to get the job done. He didn't get it done, but I did play the Melendez-Alvarez goes the distance prop, which I think I got at like minus 110 or something. I had like 3 units on that. So I had a small loss tonight, not as great as I would have liked. Overall, it was I think I went 6-5 on my picks. Not a great night for me personally. A couple surprises there. There's a few that kind of looking back, I wonder if maybe I would have gone the other way. I did pick Melendez against Alvarez. I mean, look, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to take the guy who's fought more. Alvarez has been very inactive, and then I also felt he'd struggle with the reach tonight, which he did in the first round. But Alvarez was able to get those takedowns. Those Stockton guys sure don't know how to stop the takedown, it seems, when it comes to wrestlers. So I think that was shown again tonight. But yeah, no, overall, it didn't do as great as I would have liked, but we'll get him next time.
Yeah, definitely. It seems like we're in a similar boat, bets and picking wise. I lost a couple more units, but Gilbert Melendez is definitely attending Stockton wrestling practice, which
Yeah, isn't it unbelievable? Like, we've seen this so many times. Like Nick, for example, you look at him at welterweight. He's fought. He fights GSP, gets taken down. Granted, GSP is one of the best ever, but you got to learn from this. You got to stop the takedown. And then we've seen it with Nate when he fought Dos Anjos and these other guys. Where he has trouble with the wrestlers. And now Gilbert, same sort of thing when he fought Benson. And these guys like. Trust me, I know you can't learn wrestling overnight, but it is a key component to the division you're in, because a lot of these guys, if they're losing a certain battle like Alvarez was in the stand-up, you go to your wrestling and you're going to have success there.
Yeah, I think we figured out that wrestling was an important part of this sport. We figured it out. What, Dan Severn teach that or something?
Yeah, something.
Something like that,
Yeah, there's a guy over in 1FC who's kind of made a career out of it, and Ben Askren, so might be good to watch some tape on him, It might just a thought,
Jeez, it just baffles me how many high-level athletes will just, not move along with the sports. No one loves the Diaz brothers and the Stockton slap more than this guy, but God, learn a sprawl or two. Some of those takedowns were just lazy. Anywho, I think we covered most of the card. Any final thoughts? Anything that we missed that stuck out to you that you think the people want to know about?
I think we pretty much covered anything. The only thing I'm going to say is I'm really interested to see what happens with the heavyweight division next. We've got a bunch of different options here. I just tweeted this out before I came on your show here. I think you do Werdum and Dos Santos too next. You give Junior the title shot again. If there's a potential for him to be champion and beating Werdum, I think there's a great possibility there. Stipe Miocic, I know people will say he deserves it, but Junior just beat him less than a year ago, so I think it's only fair that Dos Santos gets right back in the saddle. And from there, you can do something like Miocic and Overeem, and you can do maybe Arlovsky-Rothwell. Arlovsky would be a nice title shot too, but it's tough to say. I still think he lost that fight to Schaub, so I don't know. I'm very curious to see what will happen with that division, because now it's wide open with the new champ.
Dare I say that the heavyweight division in the UFC is once again relevant?
Yeah, it
Huh?
is, and
Huh?
it's nice. You just think of it like a year ago. Who are your contenders, right? They were Mark Hunt, Travis Brown, Antonio Bigfoot Silva, and now you've got
Stop.
Ben Rothwell, Arlovsky, Stipe. Overeem's back in the mix again. He's got a couple wins, so I mean, the possibilities are endless, and I think it's never been a better time to be a heavyweight because it's wide open right now.
Yeah, absolutely love the idea with JDS. James, thanks for taking your time coming on the show.
Anytime.
We know you have your podcast.
Yeah.
You're writing all over the place. Why don't you plug a few things for us?
Definitely. Well, best way to find out what I'm up to, give me a follow on Twitter at LynchOnSports. That's Lynch. I write for Sportsnet.ca, and I also write for MMAOddsbreaker.com. And I also co-host the Parting Shot podcast, which you can find every Sunday on MMAOddsbreaker.com. I do that with my good friend Carlin Bardsley. And on this week's show, we got 3 really great guests. We got Victor Key from ONE FC, the president and CEO, on there to talk all about Asian MMA. We've got Daniel Puder, the former WWE star and MMA fighter who actually went undefeated in his career at 8-0. Got him on, and then finally we're joined by Jimmy Smith, the Bellator commentator, who will be helping us preview Bellator 138 this Friday. And Andrew, I got to thank you so much for having me on the show. Always a pleasure, and I'd love to do this again.
Nah, we love having you, man, and I encourage everyone to check out the Parting Shot podcast, one of my favorite ones in MMA. And tell Carlin that he has to block me. There always has to be at least one person who hosts the Parting Shot podcast blocking me on Twitter at all times. Shout out Adam Martin. What's up?
I didn't know that. That's hilarious.
Oh, yeah, he blocked me. But anyway, man, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate having you, and love the insight as always.
All right, appreciate it, man. We'll talk soon.
All right, take it easy, James. All right, that was James Lynch, creator of the Parting Shots podcast, overall great dude, and MMA genius. Great little piece of matchmaking there, and a little insight into what he'll have on his podcast. JDS against Werdum sounds like probably the biggest fight we can make right now. Probably a huge fight in Brazil, makes a gang of money. Let's be honest, Brazil has been hurting for some marquee matchups, hurting for a big marquee fight like this, and I think that this sells. I'm interested in that matchup. I think JDS has taken some pain over, has taken some lumps in his day, but I still feel like that's a good fight. Our next guest up will be Joey Gardner, host of Cage Cash, Joey G Sports on Twitter. Waiting on him to call in any seconds. A very, mixed bag of fights tonight. We had basically a string of mediocre fights, I guess I would call them. Your B fights, your C plus fights throughout the prelims. Very interesting to see Efron Escudero get his quick sub. Both me and James gave him our fight of the night. Or our performance of the night. Oh, and look who's coming in to join us. It seems like we got Joey G himself, the man from Tejas. How you doing, brother?
Well, I'm doing okay. Hang on one second.
You look like you're doing okay.
Hang on one second. I got to close out your YouTube page because I was watching you before I came on. Okay.
Wonderful.
Sorry. Now I only hear you once, which is enough.
But if there was a half option, maybe that would be the ideal amount.
Yeah, well, no, you're good, man. You're gold. No, I'm doing all right. I'm a little disappointed with the main event. I can't lie. I'm still a bit in shock.
But you're a big Cain guy.
Well, I had some money on him, that's for sure, and it didn't cash, which is, hey, all I can say at this point is hats off to everyone who picked him, Werdum that is, and especially, we had a conversation yesterday, a brief one. I told you, I was like, oh, wait, you're one of those guys. You're picking Werdum, and hey, hats off to you. Great job. I hope I didn't talk you off of betting him. And most of all, I want to give a shout-out to my boy Sean Carey. It's Sean Carey Tattoo on Twitter. We had a long conversation about this fight earlier this week where I was pretty convinced that Cain was going to win this, and he's been convinced that Werdum's going to win for the last 6 months. So this guy's had he's had this on the paper, ready for it for a long time. Congrats to him. Just wanted to give him that shout out.
Yeah. Shout out to Sean. Not shocked that some people got shook off of Sean's endorsement though on a fighter. But I was with him on this, man. I saw him, a long way out that this was possible. I thought that Werdum was looking really sharp, striking, and really wasn't going to respect the takedown too much. But I was still shocked. Honestly, I waited till the absolute last moment to bet this. You almost, and you and a bunch of other people almost took me off my money there. But I threw my chips down at the last possible second, which didn't work out. You could have got them at a better price, but
Hey, but a winner's a winner, man.
a winner's a winner, and a big winner at that.
A loser.
Yeah, I had invested, and lost quite a bit of money because of the Gilbert Melendez fight, and maybe we should get into that real quick. How did you score that Gilbert Melendez fight?
Well, I'll go ahead and be forthcoming and say that I did have a bet on Eddie Alvarez, as we talked a little bit about yesterday as well. But to me, I was listening to you a little bit talking to James before, and I agree with y'all's stance on that I think, I scored at 29-28 for Eddie Alvarez, and I think that it was more so, well, I don't want to take away from the grit of Eddie, because with one eye, it was pretty impressive how he finished that fight, but I think Gil just didn't put his foot on the gas, man. To me, I'm sitting there with my brother and a couple of my friends are watching the fight. You see Eddie's eyes closed. Man, he wasn't throwing any right hands. He wasn't throwing any kicks. I mean, he wasn't even being aggressive whatsoever, and he allowed Eddie back into the fight, and Eddie took full advantage.
With sloppy takedowns, too, in my opinion.
Yeah, man, and when I broke the fight down, I thought it was pretty even everywhere. I gave Eddie the advantage in speed, a little tighter boxing, better footwork, but no, all of this is pretty slight. Maybe a power advantage. But as far as wrestling goes, I was the one. I really thought that the wrestling advantage would go to probably Melendez, slightly at least. Maybe not enough to score Melendez takedowns, but I did not see Eddie grinding out top control to win the fight. And so, color me shocked on that front. But
well, you saw
I'm happy
too.
that Eddie. Go ahead.
No, you saw too that Gilbert had some opportunities where he went for reversals when he was on the ground, and I thought that those were, those opportunities would have been successful against, someone of Eddie's caliber. And maybe I just written off Eddie because he's been so injury riddled, and maybe, I just, because he's been in Bellator so long, I poo-pooed his skill set. But I really thought that in those transitions, in those tricky little, moments in between the stand-up phase and the grappling phase, that Gilbert would win every single one of them, and he lost every single one of them.
I felt like the fight was gonna go down as more of a brawl. I felt just the way Gil's fought recently. I mean, I won't say that against Pettis. He knew he had to employ a certain game plan against Pettis to be successful. But in a fight like with Diego Sanchez, where Gil would obviously feel he had the upper hand, he could have chose to fight a more strategic bout. He could have chose to do what he did against Eddie in the first round. He was using the jab. He was being measured. He picked his shots, and he was piecing Eddie up in the first round.
That jab was landing at will in the first round. It was pop. It was there. Pop. It was there. He was setting up combinations nice. He did this. He just feinted with the right hand a couple times early in the first round, and then used that feint with the right hand to land the jab again, and then actually land an overhand right. It seemed like it was all Gilbert Melendez, and then it just fell to pieces very quickly.
I mean, just like Eddie's eyesight in his left eye, Gil's left hand, or Gil's jab, or even Gil's aggression just went out the window after the first round. My brother's sitting on the couch next to me, and he has an opinion that I hold very highly. He watches a lot of fights just like I do, and when he saw Eddie blow his nose and his eyes shut immediately after the first round, he's like, man, the way this fight's going, it's over. Eddie's going to get stopped. I mean, Gil should be able to put it on him and finish him. And I had pretty much at that point written off the bet I had on him at plus 155. But, I mean, we're talking about Gil a lot, about what he didn't do, but let's talk about what Eddie did do, man. I mean, he dug deep and he did what he had to. I mean, it was pretty clear that he couldn't see out of that eye. I mean, not only the fact that it was swollen shut. I mean, there's one point in round 3, I believe, he threw a left hook that was so short that he even laughed after he threw it. Did you catch that?
Yeah. There was a lack of depth perception involved.
It's like he threw it so short, and then the second goes by, he just giggled. I mean, he's like, okay, well, what am I gonna do, man?
Yeah. He's like, no more hooks, only straight punches, only takedown attempts. Up to that point, you almost saw it click in his brain.
And hell, it worked, man. I mean, we watched Gil fight Ben Henderson, and Ben didn't really have much success with his grappling, and to see Eddie Alvarez do it, I mean, yeah, I don't know what was going on, man. There was a lot of fights on this card that were a little odd, that didn't necessarily go down the way I thought, and you could chalk it up to, you know, a lot of different things. Maybe it was the altitude, maybe the cardio wasn't there for some guys more than others, but I mean, I'm not one. I don't like to take away from performances of the individuals so much. And to me, if Gil really wanted that fight, he was in the driver's seat. Dig deep, man. All you got to do is win 1 out of 2 rounds. All you got to do is land some strikes.
I hate to be the guy on the couch, literally the guy on the couch telling him how to get it done, but I just felt like, you know, that was your fight to win. That was, you know, his fight to take. You said it was a crazy fight and that there was a lot of crazy moments tonight. There was a lot of just like, what the fuck happening in this card? We had a man vomit on himself in the post-fight interview, to which...
Well, who did that? I missed that. Maybe, okay, because I'm going to tell you real quick, to be honest, I had some friends over, a couple guys that don't watch fights all that often, and in between fights I was like going back to last pay-per-view, showing them the Brown-Arlovsky fight. I was just talking up some narratives, talking about some of the guys, so I might have missed some in-between stuff. So who threw up on himself?
Yar Rodriguez pukes on himself in the post-fight interview. In one of the most, yeah, it's well worth it if you have it on the DVD. Joe Rogan's response is literally, "A star is born, ladies and gentlemen," as soon as he pukes on himself.
Okay. All right, Joe.
I mean, maybe Joe, you know, his idea of what a star being born on is a little bit different than us. He did, you know, work at Fear Factor for years.
True enough. Hey, but speaking of the performance that Yair Rodriguez put on, I mean, dude, hell of a performance. He's improved so much since the last time I saw him. The tape I had on him had me believing that Charlie Rosa was going to take that fight, and he shouldn't have a problem. I thought he had the advantage in the grappling. I even gave him a slight advantage on the feet, and he had the advantage absolutely nowhere in that fight.
You and me too, brother. Yeah, misread that one in a huge swing and a miss bet on Rosa there. Yeah, you know, I was saying these young fighters who are super athletes. I was saying to James earlier, you know, the time between these camps, they just evolve so much. It's really hard. And I think also with him, I thought he moved to Jackson's. You know, these really high level athletes, you know, these Mexican fighters who are really great athletes going over into these larger camps. They got some talent brewing. I know that, you know, tough Latin America is kind of a punchline of a show, but you know, the people who have been coming from at least that top of that cream of that crop, you know, they have a bright future ahead of them.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there. I think as bettors in general, I'm just going to speak from that standpoint. A lot of times we see something happen, or we see a show like that, and you look at the crop, and you're like, you know, a lot of these guys just aren't very good, and that general idea stands out to you in your mind for too long, and you don't take into account the fact that, you know, these guys could improve, or even the fact that maybe some of these guys they're fighting aren't exactly top competition. I mean, let's be honest. Charles Rosa ended up being, what, a mediocre-sized favorite to a large favorite, minus 250 range. I didn't see what the closing line was, but he was around 250, 240 throughout the week, and even lower at some spots. But even then, I mean, he's had a couple performances in the octagon. He lost to Dennis Seaver, and then he looked impressive in his next bout. But you got to sometimes take a step back and think about who you're putting your money on. Clay Collard's another example. You know, he looked like a promising kid, and then he goes in there against a guy in Gabriel Benitez who just came out on fire and was ready to, you know, he wasn't going to get punked in Mexico.
No.
So, again, I found myself, I bet on both those guys. I actually had to parlay the two of them together that didn't cash, obviously, just because, you know, I thought they were two reasonably, you know, likely winners, and it paid out a little better than even money. So that was a one-unit bet I lost, and it's bets like that maybe, or thoughts like that you need to take out of your I don't know, the process of what you do to make a pick. So it's tough. Yeah. It's tough. You never know what's going to be the bigger factor. Who's got better skills? Who's got the momentum going forward? Or a hometown crowd like that. I mean, you could tell some of the Mexican fighters when they really had the crowd behind them, and it really helped them.
Definitely. I'm taking a question from our little Q&A section here. Y2 Casey from Twitter. Shout out to him. Cool dude. He does an interesting you know, collection of everyone's picks for the night. If anyone wants to get up to it, it's at Y2 Casey. He says, Werdum, top 3 heavyweight of all time. What do you think, man?
Whew, that's tough.
Beat the legend, Fedor Emelianenko.
Yeah, okay, you're onto something there for sure. Well, then you got to say, what was I saying to you yesterday? I've been one to talk up Cain Velasquez, and if you listen to my podcast, Cage Cash, which I do with Nate Miller and Travis Montgomery, we do it
Subtle
usually midweek
plug.
on Wednesday. Yeah, a little bit there, but we released today, this morning. It was a late release for us. But anyhow, last night, if you didn't catch it, we talked a little bit about who's better all time, just throwing it around, Cain or Fedor. So the thing with Fedor is he's got the better resume, hands down, no doubt, and Cain will never match that resume. He won't have that many fights, and there just aren't as many decent to good to great heavyweights walking around these days. Back then, you had the mystique of you got Arlovsky in his prime, you've got Nog in his prime, you've got Krokop killing dudes back in his prime, and Fedor's just beating all these guys. So Cain, what has he had? He can only knock down what you put in front of him. But then
But is he top 3 of all time? Is he top 3? You can put Fedor in there, and he can still be top 3.
It's so tough to say now. But to me, like skill for skill, I felt like if Cain in his prime fought Fedor in his prime, Cain would win. Now you can talk about the crossing of.
But Werdum beat them both, so is Werdum top 3 heavyweight of all time? Both,
so by that logic, you'd have to say, yeah.
Is he the greatest heavyweight of all time?
I'd like to see what he does going forward, because I'm always an advocate of styles make fights, and I know one guy in particular, or two guys in particular, that would love to get a crack at Werdum right about now is one, Andrei Arlovsky, who's on a great hot streak, and he has a win over him in the past. I'm not saying he can beat him. I'm saying he wants a crack at him, but someone who I still
before I eject you from this Google Hangout.
All right, go ahead. I had to throw the name out there. I mean, I think honestly, right now, if you're talking about making fights, that's the fight to make, though, because you can sell it, you can advertise it. I mean, they have history. Arlovsky beat him.
James Lynch on this in JDS. Is he the other guy you were going to mention?
Yeah. Okay. So JDS is obviously next because again, the only man to ever stop Werdum with strikes and in brutal fashion is Junior Dos Santos. My thoughts on Junior Dos Santos.
Great highlight reel.
For sure, absolutely. And my thoughts on Junior Dos Santos since the trilogy with Velasquez, particularly the last 2 wars he went through, is that I don't think he's the same fighter anymore. Now, is he diminished to the point to where Werdum could knock him around in there? I don't know. And that's intriguing. I want to see that. I want to see them both. I think I want to see Arlovsky just because that's a good fight to make, and I think Werdum will look good against him. And then you can really sell that Junior Dos Santos matchup, especially if you throw Junior in there and he gets another win. Maybe you keep him on the show, because who knows? And then there's Stipe wandering around there too, who wants a crack. So, hey.
Yeah.
And then Ben Rothwell chuckling somewhere in the background. That's more humor than reality.
All right. Overall, what did you think about the card, man? I'm about to wrap this thing up soon, but grade the card for us. A to F.
I mean, we had some lackluster ones, and we had some real quick, impressive finishes. I'm gonna say like a B minus, and that's not. I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, the main event, if I was on Werdum or I was rooting for Werdum, I'd feel a little differently. I mean, definitely the ending was good because it's still a shock. It's got a shock value, man. Even if you picked Werdum, I don't necessarily know if you thought he was going to beat him down in that fashion. Like if you told me that Cain was going to gas and he was going to look done after round 2 or even in the middle of round 2, then I would have just said you're a damn liar.
Yeah, you don't know this sport. You don't understand it. You're an idiot. I would have been in the same boat. We talked about this. I placed the bet on Werdum, but I thought that by the 3rd round we were going to be seeing Cain cruising on the grind, with the takedown. Overall for this card, I give this card a regular old C. There's just too many stinkers on this fight, and the 2 fights that were really boring were so very boring that they were suicidally boring. Tisha Torres against Angela Hill sucked the life out of me. It was really bad. And God damn it, if Kyle Pendra didn't involve himself in another one of the worst fights in UFC history.
I hate that guy. I can't put a bet on him. I didn't bet on him this time. I didn't bet on him. I didn't bet against him. I didn't bet the over-under. I just stayed away from it. I'm tired of getting burned by him. I picked him in the MMA analysis contest, which that worked out for me, but didn't work out for me great in the end because, everyone who picked Werdum just picked up a lot of points on me, so, it is what it is. And this card, I enjoyed it from an entertainment value. It was a horrible betting card. I'm not going to shy away from that. I lost quite a bit. I posted on Twitter I lost like 11 units, which sounds horrible, which is horrible.
You lost more than me, brother.
Yeah, I was on a pretty good winning streak, so I don't feel as bad about it as I would normally. And everyone who follows me and even tails my bets at times, they know that I keep a high volume, and it works in my favor a lot. And sometimes if we
Oh
have
no,
nights like this,
yeah, I think that everyone who follows you on Twitter knows you've been on a really hot streak. You know, you're consistently, in there grinding away units with with some nights that are huge winners. Temporary setback, brother.
no, man, I do what I can. I'm no expert. I never call myself an expert. I feel like you're silly if you think you're an expert on this game because there's so many things that can happen. One last fight I'd like to talk about if you're trying to wrap this up. Um, the Henry Cejudo fight was a little disappointing to me. I played the points handicap in that, which some people on Twitter, actually one guy in particular, called me out on it. He was like, I don't know about that. I can see Chico winning a round, and I didn't see how he would. But man, Cejudo just started out a little slow, and to be honest, he never looked overly impressive in the fight. And it ended up being one judge, one round that cost me that handicap, and that really started the downward spiral on the card. But as far as Cejudo and his run and what people think about his prospects as a contender at this point, I hope everyone pumps the brakes on the let's get him in there with DJ ASAP because man, he's that Olympic gold medalist. He could hang. He's the only real challenge. He might be at one point, and I really believe that he could be at one point.
2 years.
But he needs time, man. I think that it's obvious the UFC wants to build him slow because when you go from fighting Chris Carriazo coming off of a title shot and you dismantle him, but then they send you backwards to fight someone like Chico Camus. And let's be honest, man, let's give Chico some credit because he came game to fight. He knew this was his shot to make a name for himself and to derail a big-time, prospect. And Cejudo, I mean, he won, clearly.
Yeah.
But he wasn't overly impressive, and I think that performance left something to be desired. I think that you really want to see him get in there and start displaying a little more tenacity and start finishing some guys before you put him in there with DJ. Because if you throw him in there with DJ tonight and not Camus, DJ is getting him out of there.
For sure.
No doubt.
DJ ends that fight,
He'll submit him or something. I mean,
he might take him down.
Damn good. And so if you want to build Cejudo good, you got to get him in there with someone he'll look impressive against. It's on him though. I mean, they gave him that fight tonight. He should have looked more impressive against this opponent. He looked pretty damn good when I saw him live in Dallas against Carriazo. So the fact that he looked less impressive tonight, it's either maybe he overlooked him, maybe he had an issue with his weight cut. Who knows, man? He's an interesting kid.
Bad taco. You might have missed that. Cejudo blamed bad performance on a bad taco, bad fish taco.
Well, I mean, to that, all I can say is, what the fuck are you doing eating a fucking taco before you're about to go out to a fight, man? I mean, take better care of yourself, bro. Take care of yourself, man. That's all I got to say. I don't understand that about fighters, too. Kelvin Gastelum is so disappointing to me as well. I know I'm rambling here. I want to bet on him inside the distance. Nate Marquardt was done. I was right about that. But, man, Kelvin still, that might have been one of the least impressive finishes that I've seen in quite a while because he had him on the ropes, man. He had about a minute and a half to minute 45 that he could have gotten him out there at any point during that time, and he just didn't have the gas to do it, or he didn't have the killer instinct. I don't know. But, dude, get your shit together, Kelvin. Like, get on a diet. Get back with Dolce. It doesn't even have to be Dolce. People have their differing opinions on it.
No one's allowed to use the word Mike Dolce on my podcast. Sorry, man.
We talked about this, but hey, when he was with Dolce, he looked good.
You said it again.
He hasn't. Hey, you can kick me off now if you want to. It's all good, man. But you know what? Get with someone else. I don't care. Get a nutritionist or a dietitian, someone who's going to get your – God, I mean, I hate to keep using profanity because, trying to keep your family here. Children's show, for sure. Keep it PG. But, dude, man, he's got so much freaking potential. Everyone can see it. If you don't see it, you just – I mean, he's got to get the weight under control. He needs to be at 170. He's too damn small to fight at 185. If he fights at 170, he's a contender.
Yeah,
that's all I got.
All right, man. We're gonna wrap this show up. You have your show, Cage Cash. Is there anything else you want to plug for the people?
Yeah, man. Check me out on my show, Cage Cash. We usually record Wednesdays, drops Thursday morning with my boys Nate Miller and Travis Montgomery. We keep it real, we keep it light, we have a good time. It's a fun show. You should check it out. We also drop some winners on occasion. I didn't this week. Hopefully I'll bounce back. And other than that, I recently started working out a little thing with Last Word on Sports. I should be doing a little bit of MMA writing for them coming up, so look for that in the coming days. Again, I'm at Joey G Sports, and Andrew, thank you so much for having me on the show, man. It was a blast.
Nah, man, it was great having you, and we very much appreciate your input, and we'll have you on again soon, all right, brother?
Fantastic. All right, take it easy,
All
bro.
right, take it easy, man. All right, and that was Joey Gardner, Joey G Sports on Twitter. It's been the second episode of Before the Bald Man Speaks, and the Bald Man's probably been speaking, let's be honest. We ran a little overtime there. We'll quickly, go through all my points here, and we'll wrap this up. I think the biggest highlight coming out of this show is that, these Mexican fighters coming into American camps, ATT, some coming to Greg Jackson's, they're such athletic specimens that they're going to get this high-level training, and they're going to evolve a lot between fights. The stigma from the tough show should probably go away, as we saw with Rodriguez, we saw with Benitez, that they have the potential to really become something, in the division. Maybe not champions, but definitely contenders. We took away that Kyle Pendridge is still boring as fuck as a fighter. We took away that Trevino is a straight clown. Definitely winning the Clown of the Month award with everything. And I still kind of feel like that eye poke was intentional. And God damn it, if the commentary of Goldie and Joe Rogan today wasn't particularly insane. We had Joe Rogan call Mexico the motherland at some point in the fight. Goldie was pronouncing the popular snack Doritos as Doritos constantly. I'm not saying that Doritos isn't a step up above corn nuts, but god damn it, if we can't just say it like normal people, it's Doritos. Goldie opened up a segment during the broadcast with the phrase, "We've talked about Aztec warriors for centuries." I don't know what social circles Goldie hangs out with. Clearly, I would like to know that. They seem like they'd be super entertaining. But no one has talked about Aztec warriors for centuries. We're not talking about Aztec warriors for centuries. That is not a thing that's happening. Henry Cejudo disappoints, but I still feel like he still has a lot of potential. During that fight, it was very interesting to see Joe Benavidez in the crowd rocking a definite Miami Vice look. In this, I'll end on this note. Probably the most embarrassing part about being an MMA fan happens to me nearly every broadcast. If we're lucky enough to have a pay-per-view event, it happens right at the beginning when we get to hear, the UFC anthem by STEM. Nothing could be more terrible to do as a promoter in 2015 than think that STEM song is still relevant for viewers. No one watching the UFC listens to that song and enjoys it. If they do, please contact me on Twitter. I'll be sure to A, block you, and B, find you in real life so that I can tell you how despicable of a human being you are. STEM and nu metal have no place in a professional sport. Please, any Zuffa executives, if someone gets this taped to you by any way possible, make everyone who is a fan of this sport and wants to see it succeed long-term happy. Remove that stupid fucking song from the beginning of your broadcasts. It is horrid. All right, I'll let y'all go. Thank you all for watching and coming on here. I really am going to try to evolve this, become more interactive with the people who watch the show. If you can, please spread the links on Twitter. I will repost this broadcast when it's archived. Send that archive out to people. Talk it up if you enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, just stop watching and don't tell me what a loser I am on Twitter. I'm a sensitive soul deep down inside. I want to thank James Lynch, who came on early with some fantastic insight. I also want to thank Joey Gardner, both fantastic individuals. Give them a follow on Twitter. You can get at me at any time at the Clown Kid on Twitter. And hopefully we'll do this again next week. All right, everybody, thank you for joining me, and have a great night. Peace.